Please welcome to the stage former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed, former Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter, and Citizen co-founder Larry Platt.
These two guys, when you read their records, you realize they were separated at birth. Let me just give you, Mayor Reed, in your 8 years as mayor of Atlanta, hired more than 900 police officers, creating the largest police force in the city's history, which not coincidentally oversaw a 37% drop in crime during his tenure, improved fire rescue response times, reopened all the city's recreation centers, successfully led a series of sweeping reforms to address a $1.5 billion unfunded pension liability. It goes on and on. 17 major companies moved their regional headquarters to Atlanta. I believe it was Invest Atlanta was your program, which was stunning economic development. Michael Nutter's 8 years as mayor, I don't have to tell many in this room, homicides were at a 60-year low at the end of his tenure. High school graduation, college degree attainment were up. Philadelphia added hundreds of miles of bike lanes, trails, launched the first low-income friendly bike share system in America. Philadelphia's population grew every year, and including the largest percentage of millennial population growth in the nation. Second term alone, more than $11 billion of economic development. It's as if you guys, like I said, we're separated at birth. And I thought about this when I saw all of the excitement about Eric Adams, and I realized that these guys were Eric Adams before there was an Eric Adams. So you guys are connected. Mayor Reed, you spent some time here in 2007 and saw a candidate running for mayor. Tell us about that.
So I had. You push up your button. Yes, so it was interesting. I had a friend of mine who was a reporter in the market at the time, had a local show that I was dating when I was in Atlanta, so I would come to Philadelphia often. And there's this commercial that I just used to come on television when I was listening. I loved it. I was a state senator, but it was Michael Nutter dropping his daughter off at school. And this commercial was fantastic. And he pointed out that he was the only person running for mayor whose daughter was in public school. And I called him and asked him for the name of the firm, and it was the campaign group. So I called the campaign group, hired them, and won my election by 814 votes. So they must have made some pretty good commercials for me.
I love that. So you stole an idea. That's
I did.
Good.
I did.
Perfect for us today.
And happily.
So you both are what I call pragmatic progressives. And in your terms as mayors, you, in retrospect now, could make the argument that you reclaim the mantle of progressivism. Mayor Nutter, can you expand upon that?
Well,
and I should say, you said on CNN the other night this line which was, "I wish some of these people who are woke would go back to sleep."
yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for playing. Please go to fuck back to sleep. Yes, thank you. So I don't know. I mean, you'd have to talk to the progressives. I apparently now, at this advanced age, apparently I'm a part of the establishment, and just want to do a bunch of old stuff. I think in accordance with the theme here, and I promised Congressman Evans, who I was just talking to, that I would say this, there is no conservative or progressive way to fix a pothole. You just need to fix the fucking pothole, right? And get that done. So I don't know if they consider me progressive. I was certainly liberal, a little fiscally conservative. I believe in having money, but very, very socially forward-facing.
Since your op-ed in the Inquirer last week, a lot of people have asked me if you're running for mayor again. I think, given your language today, it seems like that's not happening.
Nah, I think that's just going to be the way I talk from now on. Yeah.
From now on, you've been talking like that ever since I know you.
Well, they just didn't know that.
Mayor Reed, I want to talk to you about that also, because you just ran for mayor again after an amazing 2 terms and lost. So I want to get into the climate today. But also, you said something in your campaign that reminded me of when Mayor Nutter spoke about the kids who were doing flash mobs. Remember that here
2011.
in Philly in 2011? You said, these folks, meaning those who are breaking the social contract, no, I don't play. You both have channeled the mood of the electorate. Is that part of the job of being mayor?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that I ran for mayor because we had a 62% spike in violent crime. And I didn't beat Michael's record, but when I was mayor, we dropped crime to the lowest level in 40 years. And we had almost unprecedented population growth. And I was influenced heavily by a book by a guy named Michael Barber, and it was called Instruction to Deliver. And the thinking behind this book is that if you take care of the consequential things in people's lives, the public will comes with you and you can do the things that you actually run for office for. Mm-hmm. So when you run for office, there's something in your heart, something that you want to do something about, and it's the real reason that you run. But if you're in an environment where people are getting knocked over the head, shot, murdered, and all of these different challenges are in people's faces every day, they won't go with you on the big things. They won't open every single recreation center in the city of Atlanta. They won't provide reading programs for your young people. They won't keep it open 6 days a week to 7 o'clock at night. All of the things that are a part of running in your heart, you don't get to because people don't believe. The fundamental job of the mayor is to shape the public will and to make people believe again. And you get that day by day, inch by inch. Every time somebody's trash gets picked up on time. Every time a pothole gets repaired. Every time a crime isn't committed. Every time I'm feeling safe moving through my city, the public gives you more and more and more to do what people frame as progressive issues. Right. And so I think with Mayor Nutter and I, it's really about getting to our hearts. Nobody runs for mayor to arrest people, right? But I guarantee you, if you don't keep the public safe, when you come to the public for the thing you want to do to expand green space, right? To make a movement on green issues, they won't believe you because when they walk outside of their home, right, they're seeing a city that they're not in love with. And so that was my theory of governing.
I think that's really important, and the definition of leadership. We talk a lot about your speech in that church in 2011, in which you lambasted these kids who were, and you had no reticence about taking a moral position. Yeah. But I think almost, for our purposes in this discussion, what's almost just as important is what happened the next morning. There was a press conference. Do you remember that? And can you tell us about that?
Very much. I think the first thing I would have to say about that, I mean, it's probably one of the more significant moments, non-tragedies, significant moments in my tenure, and it was a moral moment. I thought it was a crisis in our city, and it was about leadership. Interestingly enough, 10 years later, that was the summer of 2011, you know, a lot of things have happened since. I'm not sure I could give the exact same speech. I could talk about certain things, but a lot has happened in the interim. But that was an environment where I could have that kind of conversation. The press conference the next day was on the northwest corner of City Hall. That was a different environment, a different circumstance, surrounded by, you know, elected officials, appointed officials, the clergy, community people, and others. And that speech was about carrot and stick, some of the things that Mayor Reed talked about. We're going to keep our rec centers open. We're going to provide more services. We're going to address some of the main issues that young people are talking about. But that was also when I announced, you know, new curfew and calling on parents to look after their children. I mean, they are yours. We can help you with that. And so really, the press conference was really about a carrot and stick approach.
The other thing that's fascinating about that press conference is who was standing right behind you.
Yeah. So if you see, there's still some video of that up on YouTube. Rest in peace. I mean, Jerry Mondesire, you could never miss him because of the hat. Standing right next to me, of course, Police Commissioner Ramsey, the DA at the time, Seth Williams, all the folks in the administration. People were seriously concerned. Young people running through the streets, they had beat up a 60-plus-year-old black man, rampaged through Macy's. It was just way, in my opinion, just way out of control. And you have to set some boundaries for folks, young, middle, and more senior. Again, it goes back to something Mayor Reed said. If you're not taking care of some of the fundamentals, you will not be able to do the big things. People want to be safe. Everyone has a right to be safe. Their kids go to school, walk down the street, go to church, synagogue, mosque, temple, wherever it is you want to go. And I'm not saying this is some, pie in the sky, society. Folks have been, since Cain and Abel, we've had some challenges with people doing things, but it just can't be acceptable. And the mayor has to say that and make it clear what's okay and what's not. And then you go from there.
And having the DA council members with you on that is actually how you get stuff done, right? I want to discuss with you guys how you get stuff done. And I think you use a more colorful term for that. It's how to get shit done, if I remember.
Yeah, since I'm in Philadelphia, it's how we get shit done.
Yeah. So, Mayor Reed, talk about, and to do that, when we talked previously, Mayor Nutter said that you were better at kicking the shit out of your council. How did you get stuff done with city council?
Actually, I loved on my council. I was trained by a guy named Willie Brown, who was the mayor of San Francisco and the former speaker in the state of California. And so what he taught me was that I have 15 council members, so I needed 8 votes, which is why cities are amazing. Because if you persuade the mayor and 8 council member, you can really move change at a far faster pace than you certainly see in Washington or in typical communities, and have a big impact in a decisive way. And what he taught me, and I was trained in the Georgia legislature, there was a man named Tom Murphy, who was the Speaker of Georgia House, and he said the care and feeding of your city council is about 15% of the job. So I had a standing rule that if any member of the city council came to my office and wanted to see me, I would stop whatever I was doing and visit with that council member. And I knew their birthdays, the names of their children, the names of their spouses, because you can't move without 8 votes. And during my mayoralty, I never lost a vote in 8 years on a legislative item. I lost 1 vote on a board appointment in 8 years. And it was because I was maniacal about how we treated the members of council. And it was primarily, we did pension reform. We passed the most sweeping pension reform. Our city was headed to be in Detroit. We were spending about 18% of the gross revenue on pension costs alone. And our pension system was terrible. It was we were just paying interest payments. So we weren't even paying principal. We were between 45 and 55% funded. We passed the most sweeping pension reform, certainly of a major city in America, 15-0. Because we stayed at it and worked at it, and we kept the city from becoming insolvent. We moved from 2 steps above junk status to AA+ from Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch by the time I walked out of office with the biggest cash reserve that we had in the history of our city. But it really wasn't about being tough, although I would be very tough. I only got tough after flowers and candy and cake and cookies and roses.
Well, that was my question. It can't all just be carrot. What sticks do you have?
Well, first of all, you're the executive, so you're responsible for service delivery. So if you want an important project in your district, the big thing in Atlanta was license plate readers. You can put, I'm telling you, if you put license plate readers anywhere in the city, crime drops. Because if somebody's in a stolen vehicle, there's about a 75% chance that they're going to commit crime. So you use all of the tools that the executive branch controls almost absolutely, and you distributed them in a loving way.
I love that. Bernardo, what do you think about that? Because you had your difficulties with council, I was naive. I thought, oh, that's great, good governance. He wants to do a 311 program. You both did 311. I was surprised that you got tremendous pushback to improving city customer service.
Yeah. But I mean, so as you well know, and the mayor knows, so I spent 14 and a half years on city council, and I'd worked in council as a staffer before. I don't know if I got down to kids' names, but I tried to, I knew these members fairly well. Although it is interesting in the transition from being a council member to being mayor, because you go from being a colleague to the person who ultimately has to say no to everyone about something. And that really pisses people off, right? So, and we had like that thing, the Great Recession. And so I said no a lot about a lot of stuff, right? Because I didn't want to run out of money. The 311, as it was introduced, a lot of other cities had done it. New York was a big leader. Chicago was a big leader. I thought, we're the fifth largest city in America. Maybe we should have a 311 system. The concern by council was that people were going to stop calling their offices constituent service. I was a district council person. I know this. Constituent service is the lifeblood, in many instances, of a city council office. Legislation, interesting. When I was a district council person, my constituents, we basically kind of had a deal. I'll take care of all your day-to-day stuff in the district, and you don't really need to worry about what I'm doing legislatively. And we did well. We had a great time. But we finally convinced City Council that people are still going to call you. There's no question about it, and people still do. Even after the first year of the 1 millionth call to the 311 center, people are still calling City Council members. I want to go back to something, though, that the mayor talked about. So I'm primarily known for, I do love that record, Mayor, of never losing a major vote. The press here, never seen a controversy they didn't want to report on, gets distracted, I think, by the sausage making and the noise that comes out of the legislative executive branch in the process. I may not know my record as well as the mayor knows his, but actually, I don't think we ever lost a major vote. The controversies in our administration were the votes that never happened. And there were two big ones. One was certainly on soda tax, 2010, 2011, which then subsequently passed, pretty much the exact same bill that we introduced, but we didn't have a vote because we couldn't get 9 votes. And then PGW.
Oh, yeah.
The sale of PGW, which literally never had a hearing.
That would have been a $500 million net windfall for the city, right?
Net windfall, which almost all of which was going to go into the pension fund,
right.
Which was 46% funded at the time. And we had a plan to, I think, get it up to about 80% funded in about 3 or 4 years with that massive infusion of cash. And all the rest of the stuff was the noise and the fighting was primarily first term during the recession. Second term, economics change, the city's on a roll, and, you just have a lot less fighting when you have money.
Right. I want to go into the climate today, and your both of your advice for chief executives today in cities, what's different and how they should be approaching the position now. What should be the prescription for cities in 2022? Mayor Reed.
Make sure you don't blow the budget, because there is zero tolerance for poor financial performance. People have so much transparency now that it's inexcusable. And I think that you have to listen much more quickly now. When Mayor Nutter and I were mayors, we had more lead time when issues were emerging. Not anymore. So the change in technology and the level of transparency puts you in a position where your response capability has to be far faster. So you're going to have a really terrific bench. And anybody who's running the city right now ought to open it up to the most talented people you can possibly find and let them in, because you're going to need the desire that's out there right now for public service. Certainly in this post-COVID, or this COVID environment, there are a lot of really talented people who would give up an awful lot of money to do what we do in government. And you got to let that in right now. So one, I would keep my eye on the books like a laser, because people have very low tolerance for wasting money and high taxes and tax increases of any kind. So you got to run the government well so you can do your priorities and what you got elected for. You got to open up government and really invite talent in and let it run. And then you got to adjust to the speed with which issues can come up and directly engage on them really fast.
Yeah, and as an addendum, we now have all this federal money coming in, and I've been asking, what's the plan for it here?
About that.
So pick up on that.
So I agree with everything the mayor said, and I just want to remind folks, because I came in a couple years before the mayor, but we had a lot of overlap. When I came in office in 2008, I guess, if we go to the great source of knowledge and information, Wikipedia, I think Facebook and Twitter were about 2-3 years old. And even then, we were trying to, I didn't know what either one of them really were, but we kind of caught up with it. But it's just a totally different environment now. I would walk out of speeches in 2008, and before I got to the car, folks were commenting on what I just said. I said, well, how the hell did they weren't even there. How did they know that? These platforms, right? So now, that's just exploded, right? So yes, fiscal discipline always has to be the number one. But I think given what has happened, especially after 2020 and a whole slew of other, I was in, was Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, a whole laundry list of things that happened before, of course, the video explicit murder of George Floyd, and then all the events of last summer. So, and the rise in crime, not just here, but across the country, and at least in Philly, that rise started before the pandemic, before we ever mentioned the word pandemic, but has now continued, right? So public safety still has to be a number one priority. People have a right to feel safe. It's really hard to get folks' attention if all they're worried about is what's going to happen when I walk down the street. And so I think governing today, for me, 6 years later, 13 years since I started, I think it's just a very, very different environment. The complication of 2020, worldwide pandemic, fiscal distress, racial reckoning, and protests, and the craziest presidential election in modern times. 3 of those things are still with us. And for some people, the 4th is still going on, right? So that's the environment that you're governing in now, which is just very, very different than 08, 9, 10, and that environment. So quick communications, make your decisions, and be honest with citizens about what you can and cannot do.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the op-ed you wrote that criticized Larry Krasner. And you both are not, I think it's safe to say, devotees of the defund the police movement.
No.
But your argument in that op-ed is that we're being proffered a false choice between reform and safety. Is that right?
That is certainly my impression from everything that I've seen or read or folks that I talk to. Obviously, I'm not technically in the game, but I'm a citizen. I pay my taxes, and I pay attention. I care. One shooting, one murder is one too many. But it seems that there's this notion that we can either reform the police or we can be safe, and I just think that's just bullshit. You can do both. You have to do both. We've got to drive a lot of focus on the numbers. It's not just numbers. There's people behind those numbers. It's a life in this city. It's a family that's been damaged. It's a neighborhood. When someone is shot or killed on a block, it is not just a personal incident. The entire block and community and neighborhood is affected. Those kids are going to wait. They're going to have nightmares that night. Some kid they were playing with 2 days ago, and they come home and there's blood in the street and the tape and all the other stuff that goes with it. Just washing down the sidewalk does not take away the damage and the trauma of that circumstance and situation. And so I just think that, I was fortunate. I got lucky on Chuck Ramsey. I didn't know Chuck Ramsey from a can of paint, literally. I met him in B. Smith Restaurant in Washington, D.C. I didn't even know what he looked like, had never heard of him. Turns out he's the best police commissioner in the United States of America. I had a DA in Seth who we could work with and talk to. Obviously had some other issues and challenges, but as the district attorney, Seth Williams did a better job than the person who's in the job right now, because he understood the importance of public safety. And that partnership of our administration, Commissioner Ramsey, the DA, the courts, the federal agencies, the AG, and the governor's office, in my opinion, made all the difference in the world. And that's what helped in community organizations and citizens who said, we are not going to tolerate this shit going on in our neighborhoods. That's why crime went down in Philadelphia.
I mean, to move off of the mayor's point, I want us to think of it this way. So during my tenure as mayor, we had less than 100 murders, 7 out of 8 years. We went above 100 1 year. Last year, we were at 158 in my town. So we're much smaller than Philadelphia. But think about when you watch the news, because the mayor's responsible for the environment. So from a news cycle, 158 murders means that about every other night I'm hearing about somebody being murdered. So even if it isn't directly or near me, the psychology becomes that it could happen to me. So if you say, well, the difference between 158 and 100, that means like I'm seeing or hearing about a murder maybe every 4 days. And it does influence the overall environment, whether people are actually at risk or not. So aside from the fact that we're really saving lives, we're influencing the overall environment in the city, and we're creating an environment where more capital and opportunity flow in. So we need to have that kind of thought about crime and violence as well as the direct impact on everyday lives. It just seemed a natural add to the point that Mayor Nutter brought down murders to the lowest level in 60 years. You see a thriving economy run right on the tails of that, because people believe in their hearts that the city is mine too. And murder and violence make you believe less and less that the city is yours. And fundamentally, we're at our best when everybody believes the city is ours.
That's well put. Let me ask you both to define what it means to be, in your mind, to be progressive.
I'm not sure. I want to go back to something we said earlier. For me, it just means getting stuff done, making things happen, right? I mean, I will still adhere to the 4 fundamentals that I talked about until my ears were bleeding: a safer city, a smarter city, a more sustainable city with economic opportunity, and a city run with integrity and transparency. Those, for me, are the 4 pillars of what you build a city upon. If we want to talk about, a whole host of other issues, whether it's green or whether it's workers' rights or whether it's a minimum wage or, a bunch of things. I'm open to all that, right? I'm not opposed. I want people to have money. I want them to have a good life. But I think it's still, for me, there are some fundamentals, and you have to drive that message each and every day to the point where someone is actually quoting back to you what those fundamentals are. And then you know that some of the message has broken through. I just don't think it's that complicated. I will say, and the mayor made reference to DC, if we could just progressively get out of our own way. We took too long to pass the damn infrastructure bill. We're still effing around with Build Back Better. What? What are we doing? Right? I mean, we're not even fighting with the Republicans. We're just fighting with ourselves. Is it too big? Is it too small? Oh, it's in between. I mean, what's this, like Goldilocks? Something? Make a decision, agree on something, pass a fucking bill, and let's move on. Right? God damn.
Mayor Reed, what's a progressive to you?
Think about Harry Truman. Harry Truman said the quote that ought to guide everybody who's trying to help folks. He says there are about 10 to 15% of the people in America that have the power and the prestige to make sure that their interests are looked after. And for everybody else, there's the President of the United States. I believe that about mayors. There are 10 to 15% of the people in your city who are connected, who have the power and the prestige to make sure that their interests are looked after.
You talking about like Brett?
And for everybody else, I don't know Brett, but he looks good and healthy. For everybody else, there's the mayor. So when folks come to me and talk about progressive, that's paying women equally. Every woman in my administration made the same amount as a man. It's $15 an hour for every employee in the city of Atlanta. That's decriminalizing marijuana in the city of Atlanta. But it's also having AA plus credit from Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. It's also not raising folks' taxes when they're broke. It's also not raising their water rates. It's also making sure their trash is picked up. My view of being progressive is making sure that you can mold the public will so that when there's an opportunity and somebody that actually needs help, the public will go along. That's what is delivering. Folks elect politicians to win for them. And what's happening right now, certainly at the federal level, is people don't feel like we're winning for them. And the underlying data is really, really good. But we fumble the process so badly. What folks want is decisive action right now from mayors. And so when I think about progressives, put up your record. Let's have an honest conversation. Get on the stage and debate with me who you helped, right? Show me how you made sure that a mom in your town had extended daycare 6 days a week. Show me where you were able to move salaries in the city to $15. Like, you could only do that if you have what? Businesses coming into the city. Right. Show me where you had record population growth. Because when you have record population growth, guess what? You can hire enough police officers to make sure that the communities with the most violence in them have more peace. And so folks like myself, folks like the Philadelphia Citizen, have to be engaged in balancing this argument out. And we can't get exhausted because other people are yelling and talking louder than us. Because the underlying data of what they're saying, they're not delivering for folks. Right? It sounds great on Twitter and Instagram and all of the rest. Show me your data. Show me your data. And I'll show you that when you allow crime and violence to take over a city, the underlying data for the least of these is bad. And when you have a big, bold, inclusive vision, you're going to move the needle on the issues that you're supposedly so progressive on because you get 50 plus 1.
I'm going to walk around and ask if there are some questions. But before I do, or while I'm making my middle-aged slow way around the audience.
You okay, man?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right?
This is going to hurt.
Let me help you.
Talk to us about how, is this a cool job or not?
Oh, this is the best political, what?
Yeah, being mayor.
Well, post-mayor is even better than being mayor. I mean, I love this fucking job. No, mayor is, I mean, and I appreciate you, plugging the book from a couple of years ago. I mean, mayor is the best political job in the United States of America, no question. And if you talk to any former mayor who may be in another job, if you you call Ed Rendell right now, you call David Cicilline, who's a congressman, you talk to a few other folks who are in other positions, and ask them what was the best political job, they will tell you, they won't even hesitate. They will tell you as mayor, because you can get stuff done. You can make things happen. You can see the impact of your work virtually in real time. Because when you pick up that trash, when you fill that pothole, when the block is safer, People know it right then and there. You don't have to call pollster to find that out. People know. They let you know. There ain't nobody shy in this town. They will absolutely let you know what's on your mind, what's on their mind, whether you want to hear it or not.
See, that's why I think I'd hate the job. Mayor
the
Reed,
job.
do you concur? Was this the?
Oh, I love it. I mean, Mayor Nutter and I both know Mayor Bloomberg pretty well. So on any given day, he's one of the 100 richest people, certainly in America or in North America,
day.
right?
Yes.
He spent $250 million to serve a third term as mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's never gotten over being mayor. I'll tell you all a totally true story. I fly to San Francisco to see Willie Brown, my mentor, get advice because I'm trying to get over being mayor. You know, it's really bad. The first year after being mayor is just terrible. I mean, it's just awful.
Yeah.
And I asked him when you would get over it, and he said never. He said it'll only go down. So when I flew into Philadelphia last night and went over to Divine Seafood, I still look at the city from the standpoint of what I would like to take back home. Because your mind doesn't even function properly because everything you're looking at, you're trying to think, man, I could do that in Atlanta. That's really cool. That felt so good. Mm-hmm. And so it's definitely the best job in politics.
It's true.
Let's get a question here.
Mayor Nutter, the city of Philadelphia is 44% African American, yet the amount of business that the city does with minority-owned business is still relatively low. One, why do you think that is? And even as we look at the bill that was recently passed as it relates to the streeteries and it not being passed citywide, which is going to hurt other businesses throughout those neighborhoods like Manayunk, West Philly.
You're talking about the streeteries?
The streetery bill that was passed.
Yeah.
What can we do to begin to do more business with minority-owned businesses in the city of Philadelphia? And why hasn't that number grown over the last few years?
Well, I can't tell you about the last few years. It was 30% when I walked out the door, which was the highest it had been in modern history. I think that's a matter of focus. We put folks from the Office of Economic Opportunity during my time. There was a person in every department who was responsible for what was going on in that department and work with the department head to seek out. I mean, look, there are, some areas of whatever the city buys. I mean, there might not be some folks who do that. But in many instances, that's really just an excuse. It's like, where are you looking? I don't want to really hear about, can't find anybody. I mean, you tell me that you scour the United States of America and there really is no one that makes the XYZ. Okay, all right, I might accept that. Why is there no one who's making that, right? And I'm not saying I'm going to create that business, but although Mayor Reed might invest in that business, he's got some stuff in his post-mayoral time that he's doing that I'm very proud of. But I don't know what's going on currently, to be blunt. Yeah.
Got a question over here.
Hi, Mayor. I'm interested to hear your perspective on homelessness and the equity gap that we're facing today. I came to this country about 20 years ago, and at that point, I thought and I experienced a different kind of America where I thought equity was really good and most people could afford a good place to live. And now what we are seeing, it's gone so far back, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how actions can be taken to fix that. Is that a mayor's role? What do we do?
And I assume that's for both of us. I think the story on the front page of the Inquirer this morning about the report that just came out of the Philadelphia Fed about home ownership and the disparity and the gap, black-white, in this city is part of hope. I mean, the one thing I worry about, and I love the Philly Fed, first Federal Reserve Bank in the United States of America, thank you. What I love about the Fed is tremendous amount of research, tremendous amount of knowledge. What I worry about is, will it only be over in the Philadelphia Inquirer? Like, will anyone do anything with any of that data and information to advance the ball? That's one. Two, we have to, the city government, and I mean, obviously I don't speak for the city, but my perspective is cities will never be able to solely deal with the affordable housing crisis in the United States of America. That's the city, that's the state, that's, I mean, obviously we're a city and a county. That's the federal government, that's philanthropy, and the corporate sector. We have to figure out how do we further incentivize, to be blunt, the private sector to build more affordable housing at affordable prices, that they can do it, they can make some money. I actually like people to make money. I'm for that. There are people in this town and in this country who love jobs, they just hate businesses. Right? So that partnership really has to move forward. And certainly, I think, hopefully, out of either the infrastructure bill or Build Back Better, there would be additional funding for affordable housing and to really come to grips with the homelessness crisis in this city and many others. Mary, I don't know.
I think we have the biggest opportunity because of the infrastructure bill and other legislation at the federal level to move the needle on homelessness. I believe that it's going to be a combination of the real estate that's owned or influenced by municipalities. So, for example, in Atlanta, we had more than 855 acres of real estate that could be put to use in partnership with the private sector to effectively move the needle around homelessness. I will share with you that as a leader of the city, I think that when you're working and doing good quality work on reducing and ending homelessness, so if you've got 1 to 3 to 1 in 4 veterans who are homelessness, you can house a veteran. That's laziness. The number of resources and services that accompany a veteran, you can move veterans into housing very effectively if there's the public will. So if you reduce a problem by a third, which is what you do when you move the needle on veterans, right, you can reduce it by 50 points. Because what you learn from reducing homelessness around veterans, you can then apply to other people. That's what I found in the city, and we cut homelessness by about 50% during my term. So I think now is a big moment for it. I think that we need to be collaborative about it right now because of the federal resources. But I would add to any mayor who's listening and to the people of Philadelphia and the folks who are following this through streaming, don't talk about it, because homeless people read and they move. So my philosophy was to do good and don't talk about it. Really, to act with a faith ethic, right. Because I'm telling you, people they read, they get on the bus, they get on the train. The number of people that showed up in Atlanta when we really started doing well on homelessness. Yeah. I mean, I know because we would ask them where they came from. We have a friend who was the mayor of Columbus. What was Michael's last name? Michael Coleman. Yeah. Best mayor in America on homelessness. His number one piece of advice was do great work and don't talk about it. Because what you want to do is you want to take care of the people in Philadelphia. Right? I don't want to, I'm just being honest as an executive. I want to take care of the people in Atlanta. And so please remember that as you go into that issue.
Yeah. And Larry, you touched on, it was touched on earlier, but I think we didn't complete the point. One of the things from all these different calls and panels and a bunch of stuff that I do now, the mayors are some are really trying to figure out, right? Let's go back. We've got CARES, ARP, infrastructure, all passed, and hopefully Build Back Better at some point if we as Democrats can get ourselves together, right? So you really have to step back for a moment and say, okay, how much CARES do I still have? How much ARP have I not even spent? I don't know, but I'm assuming maybe the infrastructure money hasn't even come yet. It does take the feds, a little while to kick the money out of the door. Okay, so this is all brand new. On top of what I already have, on top of what I could get possibly from the philanthropic community and the corporate community. So how much money do I actually have to spend, not just on the day-to-day, not just on the same old, but to get some different results and to have a plan for how those dollars are going to be spent. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry is going to have their hand out. I get that. I understand that. Again, this is a job where often you have to say no to get to yes.
So we're going to you guys, first of all, I don't think we tap the experience and wisdom of former mayors enough, and I think that's one thing we want to do as we go on, as the citizen goes on. So we're going to have to cut this off and we just scratched the surface of your experience and wisdom. I do have one question for Mayor Reed. You said when you came in last night, you saw things that you'd want to steal for Atlanta. Anything jump out that we should know? Like
this facility, the Fiddler, this building, it's something I want something that we don't have anything that feels like this.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then of course, when I went to eat last night, I just walked around the city. I like your lighting. I like the way the city is lit, at least in the areas that I was in last night. And then the city just feels good. I mean, I was talking to Mayor Nutter. I mean, I love this place. So I've been a fan of Philly.
Well, thank you.
The improvements he made on your airport, much better.
The interesting thing about the lighting,
the Atlanta airport is amazing.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about the lighting, Mayor Reed, is so when I was president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, there was a meeting in Florence with a group of Italian mayors and Tom Cochran, and so the president of the conference always, there's some trip. The lighting we have today, in many parts, at least of Center City, came as a result of what I saw in Florence. All of their streets are lit up at night. It literally looked like daytime in many places. And I said, why are our streets so dark in Philly, right? Which is, there's a public safety component. It just, and so I literally drove the streets department crazy in those latter years. I think that was in 2012 I was there. To come up with a full-on street lighting, to elevate, and then of course LEDs, came into place. So that's where a lot of that came from, but it was from seeing Florence.
I love that. Isn't that's the anatomy of stealing ideas? That's what we do here.
But I can't leave today with that, because our thing is ideas we should steal. Could some entrepreneur, some tech person, obviously I have no capability of this. I'm just happy when my phone turns on every day. Could someone please develop the Philadelphia version of the New York COVID app so that I can stop showing people NYC COVID to be able to get into places, given the most recent announcement, which is the right thing to do, a few months after New York. If we could actually have a Philly-style app for showing our vaccine to get into places, as opposed to me having to show Philadelphia restaurateurs my New York app, I'd really appreciate that. And I will give $5,000 to the person who comes up with a legitimate app that actually works, that is secure, so that Philadelphia can steal an idea from New York and have our own app. Please.
That's... In the spirit of stealing ideas, the citizen will match your 5,000, so we're now up to 10, and we're going to work on Kasim Reed to match that. Thank you all so much.
I'm not spending the mayor's money.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
These guys are great.
Thank you all.